Hey guys, this is Jonathan and Lindsay,
Hello.
and we just got through watching Dark Side of the Ring, and it's that's back on for season 6, and we're gonna do something we should have done. I always enjoy when pro wrestling gets documentaries, and quite frankly, in my opinion, Dark Side of the Ring does a better job than WWE. Maybe it's because WWE only tells what the story they want to be told. There's been numerous stories told over the season opener, Hell in a Cell. It was from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, June the 28th of 1998. And when I first seen that they were doing an episode on this, and they always kind of do so. And I mean, it did turn out pretty sad. It was sort of dark when you think about what kind of life Mick Foley is going to have. With all those chair shots and crazy. And I'm sure his day is dark to him. Just based off his daily life. Getting up out of bed every morning. Because I remember watching that live. I mean, that was just, I just remember it was the summertime. I was probably 13, 12, 10, 11, somewhere around in there. And I always enjoyed wrestling pay-per-views in the summertime because it was, on Sundays, and I didn't have to wake up early the next day. And, you could just really enjoy it. And I just remember watching that live. And, that was really something. And not only did he fall off the cage once, he did it twice. And it's been a while since I've seen the match, and I had forgotten about the whole thumbtack spot, But we're gonna get into it. We're gonna talk about it on this episode. They had some good talking. The talking heads was Jim Cornette, Jim Ross, and he had probably the greatest call. He was on call. He had the best seat in the house, And he said, "As God is my witness, he's broken in half." That was his call. And then they had Jimmy Cordetis. I probably pronounced his name wrong. He was the referee. And then they had the doctor, which he was actually a chiropractor. I didn't realize this, but he had been in some. Involved in some movies and stuff.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
And then they had his daughter, his son, and
his wife.
Yeah, Al Snow, and his wife. I'm gonna say this: she actually looks better now than she did during the Royal Rumble match with The Rock. She looks like she's gotten younger as time has.
She is very pretty.
Yeah, but she actually looked older during that whole. But they touched on that too. We'll talk about that a little bit. But let's see. Was there anybody else? We got Al Snow.
Yeah.
Of course, Terry Funk is no longer with us, but he played a pivotal,
big part.
Yeah, in that match too. But was there anybody else that I'm missing that we talked about?
Did they have the Undertaker?
No, well, they did have the Undertaker a little bit. It wasn't, of course, he's under a WWE Legends deal, so he couldn't, but he did. We did get the Undertaker in snippets, I guess you might say.
Yeah, snippets.
Snippets, I guess. Yeah, that's why I got her here to kind of correct me when I brought it up. But overall, and for a while, Mick Foley's daughter was doing something for WWE. I don't guess she no longer is, or what the deal is. But
she looks just like her mom.
Yeah, they started off talking about, and I was hoping that it would be more of a Mick documentary, because Mick, he did a lot before he went to WWF or WWE, whatever you want to call it. But he had a big career. He started. I first come acquainted with Cactus Jack where he was like Jack Foley in Global. That's where I first come acquainted with him. And I used to see that on ESPN. And Global was based out of Dallas in the Sportatorium. But that's where I first. But he had Japan. They touched. He said that he would watch, some days he would watch 12 hours of Japanese wrestling. And then they talked about how he was Terry Funk took him under his wing, and, and they did some death matches over there, and he got really a big following over there in Japan. And then he come to WCW as Cactus Jack, and they had some footage of him and Vader. He took some crazy bumps in WCW too. He lost his ear and the whole, when his head got tangled up in the ropes, type thing. And
they did talk about JR convincing Vince to hire him on.
Yeah, and he basically, the story that I was always told was JR essentially said, if it doesn't work out, you can fire me as well, and JR really put in a good word for him. And what they say, Mick Foley, Vince McMahon, we don't want him to be nothing, create a character basically with nothing, we don't want to see his face, I guess. And the Mankind deal, it was really good. It was, he really had a lot, and they talked about all the matches he had with the Undertaker, and they had a lot of matches. Even Terry Gordy was the Punisher in some of the and one of the Buried Alive matches. They even brought him in, and they talked about that last season on the Terry Gordy episode where he was involved in that. But yeah, and they had a ton of matches, and then Paul Bearer, we got the turn where he went with Mick Foley, and they had the Boiler Room match. I really enjoyed it too. They didn't talk about it on here, but that was a brutal match too as well. And this wasn't the first Hell in a Cell match. The first one was between the Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, and it was a really good match. Shawn Michaels, he's a phenomenal wrestler. He bumps around like crazy. But and then Mick Foley said that he wanted to do something different, and I could see with that. And they started the match on top of the cage. And they didn't say this here, but I believe the Undertaker had a broken foot or a broken leg. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's the case. They didn't say that, but I believe the Undertaker had a broken foot or a broken leg. Part of it had a fracture there somewhere, and I believe I read that somewhere. And it was just crazy. And I didn't realize that was a 17-minute match. They said that it was a 17-minute match.
It's a long match.
Yeah, especially imagine how long. I bet it felt like
years
for Mick Foley. And,
I think it probably shaved some years off.
And we got talking points from his wife. She said, after he took the first fall, she was trying to call the company and couldn't get it through, and she was consoling the kids, and whatnot. And it's just crazy. He took that, and I thought it's over. I remember thinking how it's crazy that they raised when I was watching it live as a kid. They raised the cage, and Undertaker was still up there, and they gurneyed him out, and I thought that match was over. And but it wasn't the case. He come back out, and they went back on the cage. And he took another brutal bump. He went through the cage, and I thought he was dead then, especially since the chair hit him in the head. I just figured he was a goner. That's just and then they said like I said, it'd probably been 20 years, at least 10 years since I've watched this match. Maybe I can't remember. I watched so much wrestling, it all blends together. But I had forgotten about the. I remember after he took the second bump, it wasn't much to it after that, and you can really see it in here. Mick, he was out of it. He was completely out of it. During the whole match, and they really slowed it down, and you could see where he was out of it here. Yeah, he just looked like he was there, but nobody was home. And he did the whole. And I didn't realize that was the first time that Thumbtacks had made an appearance in the World Wrestling Federation, but this. They owed him I hope he's financially set, because I know he thinks about that match every day. But
something that stood out to me seemed pretty traumatic for his family.
Yeah, sure. Very traumatic to his family.
Even his daughter said on there that she has no memory of him wrestling. That and she obviously was there at several of his matches. But
yeah, she wasn't there live there, but she wasn't the Royal Rumble one. They weren't, to me. Looking back, and I've never really been a big fan of hardcore wrestling. I've probably seen his. It's not really my style. It's not really, if there's a wrestling promotion out there that I've watched the least of, it's probably ECW. And if I had one knock on AEW, they do too much of that stuff now. Because once you do one thing, it's what's it gonna? We got to do something next to get the crowd to scream, more. And they just, they just go, And today's stuff. People are doing stuff today that's just reckless. I used to see a guy on Facebook, and he would do I'm doing this for the Hardcore Legends. I can't remember what he used to, but he would jump through glass and stuff. I don't see him anymore. But a young guy. He's not even getting paid to do that stuff. But anyways, I've always been a fan of Mick Foley. Don't get me wrong. Mick Foley, he did have good character development with, he had the whole Cactus Jack and the Dude Love. I really like the Dude Love, And then after the match, they're backstage, and he's Mick Foley's asking the Undertaker, did we do the thumbtack spot? And they're pulling him out of him at the time, and it's just interesting to hear the referee talk about it and the doctor. And another thing and this even stood out to me, when I was watching the match as a kid. Terry Funk, he's trying to give Mick some time, because back then they didn't stop. Now they throw the X's up and they stop the matches. But they didn't do that then. I think that's legitimate. They didn't, you didn't stop matches then. And so he's trying to give Mick Foley some time, and he gets chokeslammed. And he's chokeslammed out of the Snickers.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was crazy, and that he basically, his Snickers are there. And even Mick says, when I first come to, the first thing I saw was Terry Funk's Snickers,
Yeah.
But And then they go on to talk. They touch bases on different things about Mick Foley and how he is rewarded with a a title run. And that was a great moment for Mick. I always remember that. I was one of the guys that was watching Nitro, and when excuse me, and when Tony Schiavone says, "Don't tune into the other show tonight because a guy that used to wrestle here by Cactus Jack is going to win their world title, and that's going to put butts in seats." Well, I changed the channel immediately because I knew I could go back and watch. A lot of times I did that. I could go back and watch Monday Night Nitro. They had another a delay replay but I was one of those guys that changed the channel and watched Mick win the title. And then they go on to talk about the whole Royal Rumble, which watching that as an adult, I just can't hardly watch it. Where basically The Rock bashes his brains in with the steel chair and the I Quit match. I mean, that was really something, And
I didn't realize he had taken so many chair shots in that.
Yeah, and he had. I mean,
I guess they took 11.
Yeah, and you can see his family, and I'm sure that's legit. His wife is basically covering her eyes and whatnot, and it's hard to watch now. Knowing what we know about CTE and what it's just hard to watch. It's hard for me to watch it even nowadays. I'm glad we don't have head chair shots in wrestling because I don't like to see somebody get hit in the head. That's not what I watch pro wrestling for, is to see somebody get hit in their brains bashed in.
Something else that stood out to me was that he kept talking about how he did it for basically the fans' admiration.
Yeah, approval. Yeah, he did it for their approval.
He wanted to be liked his whole life.
Yeah. Well, we like you. We love you, Mick Foley.
Kind of sad to me that he felt like he had to do all that.
Yeah,
but he definitely lives in infamy for sure.
Yeah, he'll be remembered. He was up there with the WrestleMania 3 match between Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. I mean, when you close your eyes and think of great memorable WWF matches, you're going to think of Hell in a Cell. And and something they didn't say in the episode, he come out in the main event and was in. I can't remember who the main event was of that match, but I believe he come out and did a run in. I believe it was a Inferno match or something like that. I can't really remember. Kane, I believe it was Kane and Stone Cold, or first blood match or something. I believe Kane won the WWF title that night, and he helped Kane do it. I believe that's the way. Don't quote me on that. Like I said, I haven't watched the entire pay-per-view in a long time, but I believe that's the way that worked out. Was he come out and was involved in and they didn't mention that anywhere in the episode. I was surprised by that, but and next week we're going to come out and try to do this on a weekly basis. This next week they talked about Ludwig Borga, and I don't really know much about him. I know he was with the WWF short time. He has a Hasbro figure. I don't own it, but I know he does have a Hasbro figure. Sort of a Russian guy, whatnot. But I'll show you. I do have a mixed autograph, and it just happens to be from the Hell in a Cell. And I try to have. I've got a lot of wrestling memorabilia here. I acquired this. I didn't get Mick to sign this personally. I bought out a wrestling collection about a year ago, something like that. And this was in part of it. But
he had went to a meet and greet.
Yeah, he had went to a meet and greet. And if you're local to the DFW area, Mick Foley is going to be at Dallas Vintage Toys April the 4th. I won't be able to be there, have prior work engagements. But would like to see Mick Foley, meet him, and he does a lot of meet and greets. And now they talked about how he's living life. He had some crazy matches even after that. I mean, he had a brutal match with Edge where he, and then he went on to TNA, and he did win the TNA world title, but now I think he's pretty much retired. He does meet and greets and his stand-up show and whatnot, and
I'll put that in there.
Oh yeah, I'll let Lindsay put that in there. But anyways, I just want to come out and do a quick review. We're gonna do one. Like I said, we looking forward to the lineup. I can't remember the lineup. I know they're going to be a Billy Jack Haynes story. I'm kind of interested in that. But overall, I wasn't looking forward to this episode, but, I enjoyed it. I wish it would have been more of a documentary about Mick Foley than Hell in a Cell. But overall, after watching it, I enjoyed it. I'll give it a thumbs up, and you should watch it yourself. Thanks for watching this video, guys. Like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell.